Welcome, everyone. This is Magic and Mountains,
the T.A. Barron podcast.
Make of your life a light. That quote from Buddha is my favorite quote ever, which is saying a lot. In this episode, we will share a few stories. I'm going to speak about light in all its various forms and read a few passages from my books. And you'll also get to hear a song performed by Carolyn Hunter. Plus, I'll also read to you a poem, a love poem, that I have never read before in public.
Woo! That's a lot for one episode.
It is. Just a light throwaway episode. Seriously, there's so much here to discover. This is going to be a 2-part episode.
Wonderful.
But first, let's take note of the empowering wording of that quote. It starts with the call to make of your life. So it's saying you have that ability, that gift, that power. And at the same time, it's also humble. It doesn't presume anything about what exactly you choose to do or how you bring a little light into the world. That is your choice. It's your life. The only question it asks is, will you use it to make a little light?
Make of your life a light.
That's right. Now, some would object. One life really isn't much. So what's the point? And, that's not all wrong. In the grand sweep of creation, against the backdrop of the entire cosmos, one life isn't much. But even so, one life is something.
Yes.
Something precious. Something unique. Maybe even something luminous, filled with light. Each and every life matters. So even as small and brief as our lives are, your life matters, and so does mine. T.H. White, one of my favorite authors, put this brilliantly in the final page of his masterpiece, The Once and Future King. He wrote, "The fate of this man or that man was less than a drop, although it was a sparkling one in the great blue motion of the sunlit sea."
Gorgeous.
As I wrote, much less eloquently than Buddha, in my book, The Wisdom of Merlin, all we have is our time and our souls. So why not make the most of both of them? Or, as I wrote in my trilogy about the birth and death of Atlantis, what matters is not how long our light lasts, but how bright it shines. In that same sense, or maybe I should say, in light of that, the very brevity of life is part of what makes it so special, such a precious gift. This is now. This is our moment. It won't come again. It's a gift to us. And while our light continues to shine, however long that might be, it's also a gift to others in our midst, to the people we love, to our fellow creatures and places we love, to the earth that sustains us all, to the values we hold most dear.
That's right.
A gift. Our mortality, for all of its sorrows and longings and limitations, is in fact our greatest opportunity, our chance to shine. Make of your life a light. The wonderful poet Archibald MacLeish wrote a poem in his 80s about the love he shared with his wife Ada. Love that remained strong to the end, even though they both knew that too soon they would die. In that poem, he compared their love to a candle's flame, and he wrote, "Love, like light, grows dearer toward the dark." And I find the key word in that whole line is dearer, because it's the fragility of it, the transience of it, that makes it all the more precious, all the more beautiful.
Grows dearer toward the dark. Like almost how you get closer together with someone in hard times, in a way?
Wisely said. That's so true. And we've all been there.
Yeah.
And also when you have a sense of the brevity of life, you immediately feel how much more precious it all is. And that's why it's important to be kind when you can. Be close to someone when you can. Express your feelings truly. Live fully. Love well.
Beautiful.
A few years ago, while cross-country skiing on a snowy ridge here in Colorado, I came across something surprising, mysterious, some puzzling marks in the snow. There was a line of tiny paw prints that ran across the ridge, the tracks of some little animal, a mouse or a vole maybe. And then, inexplicably, the tracks suddenly stopped, disappeared. Why, I wondered. So I skied over, and looking closer, I noticed, not far away, the marks of something that had brushed the top of the snow. Feathers, I realized, from a pair of mighty wings, an eagle or a hawk or an owl. That bird had swooped down from the sky and snatched that little animal, ended its life, and carried it off to the bird's nest to feed its own hungry fledglings. So in that spot on the snowy ridge, there was life and death, all bound up together in the span of a single heartbeat. Moved by that, I wrote a poem about it. It's called Death, Soft on the Snow. And I'd love to read it to you now.
Please.
Death, soft on the snow. High on a wintry hill, snow blows, swirling like a dancer's dress made of crystals, sewn with threads of frost. My skis leave glistening trails. My breath sparkles like the snow. I am all alone on this frozen slope. Then I see, just ahead, tiny footprints. Something small and furry with a beating heart and quivering whiskers scampered here not long ago. That creature left nothing but these faint marks, traces that would soon vanish in the blowing snow. But no, the footprints end abruptly. Skiing closer, I gaze at them intently, hoping to find a clue to what happened here, frozen in time and crystals. With a gasp, I noticed nearby the lightest brush of parallel lines in the snow. Feathers. The outermost edge of some great wing, an eagle perhaps, or an owl, who plunged down without warning and plucked a winter's meal. The talons closed tight, squeezing out every bit of life and tomorrow, leaving only the softest touch of feathers as they flapped with grace and power high into the sky. Almost I could hear, underneath the wind, that creature's shriek of terror, leaving its mate and burrow behind. and that bird's simultaneous shriek of joy, knowing that at last there would be food and life and another tomorrow. Buddha once said in words that ring forever, "Make of your life a light." A worthy goal, I agree, yet even the brightest mortal light will fade and finally die, with no shine or shadow that long remains, its life as fleeting as the touch of feathers on wind-blown snow. All that matters, all we can know, is that a light once did shine, sturdy and bright at times, weak and flickering at times. For a brief, beautiful moment, it gave the world a unique and lustrous glow.
Gorgeous. Such vivid imagery.
I can still, as I read it even now, I can hear the wind swirling around me with snow crystals and spirals of sparkling light around me, and that mystery.
The cycle of life all in that one moment.
Right. Life and death in a single heartbeat.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Let's go back to T.H. White for a moment. There is a scene near the end of that book that has always had a special meaning for me. It's about light and life. In that moment, King Arthur is utterly dejected. He sits alone in his tent, knowing that his battle for Camelot is lost. His round table has been destroyed, his love Guinevere is gone forever, and his greatest dream, Camelot, a society based on justice, is utterly ruined. Everything he's done, his whole life, it's all been for nothing. He sits alone, weeping, and just then he notices a young boy holding a torch outside the tent. He calls the boy inside, and he asks roughly, "Boy, why are you here?" The boy straightens up proudly and announces, "I am here to fight." "For what?" asks the king. "For Camelot," the boy declares. "Tomorrow I will run into battle, and I will fight, and I will die if I must. For Camelot is the one place anywhere where justice and honor still live." King Arthur shakes his head. "No, you will not fight." "But I want to fight. I want to fight for Camelot." "No," says the king, "this is my command. You will run behind the lines tomorrow. You will live to be an old man. And in your long life, you will tell everyone you meet that for a brief shining moment, there was a place, an idea called Camelot. And so maybe in some future time, that place might come alive again." The boy still protests, but the king says, "Now, lad, kneel." And so the boy puts aside his torch and kneels before the king. King Arthur tells him, "I shall make you a knight. What is your name, lad?" And the boy replies, "Tom." Nodding, the king takes his sword and taps the boy's shoulders. "Well now, Tom the light bringer, go forth in your life and share that light wherever you go. Tell stories, Tom. Stories that will kindle the same light in the hearts of others." Even if T.H. White had given that boy another name, Desmeralda, anything, I would have been moved by that scene. But because he was named Tom, I do confess, I might just have felt a little bit of extra inspiration.
How could you not?
Now, let's talk about that light. What does the word really mean? And what then does it mean, actually, to make your life a light? Well, for starters, it doesn't mean you need to be a big, huge bonfire, seen for miles around, or seen from outer space. You do not have to be that. Nor do you have to be a super intense spotlight. No, it means just a little bit of light. What we can bring, a small flickering candle flame, a single torch, adding light to a darkened space. Just one little flame, burning small but brave in the darkest night. Sometimes that is all we can do. And the miracle is, sometimes that is what the world needs most. Mother Teresa was once asked late in her life, with great admiration and respect, "How have you done so many great things?" And Mother Teresa responded, "I have done no great things, none, but I have done many small things with great love."
Yeah.
The small, everyday moments of kindness, or listening, or helping, or creating, or caring, or speaking out, that is bringing light.
Right. Doing many small things, but with great love.
One more quality of light deserves mention. Light and dark. Often they appear as opposites, and in many ways they are. But they are also, at the same time, parts of a unified whole. A whole that is all the more wondrous for embracing both. Light and dark define each other. The absence of one means the presence of the other. For example, stars are only brilliant against the darkness of space. Do you remember where Rhea explains to young Merlin in the first book of the Merlin saga, as they sit out under the night stars? She sees constellations in the dark places, the places that might seem empty. And in fact, she finds great shapes and inspiration from those dark spaces. By the way, that's an idea that I borrowed from the ancient Incans, because they really did see their constellations where we see only empty spaces. And so, light and dark truly embrace each other. You could say they sanctify each other. Well, as I think is probably clear to everyone, my whole life as a storyteller, I have been fascinated by light. It's such a powerful metaphor with such endless variety and subtleties. So I'd like to read to you now some passages from my books that portray light in very different ways. I'll read a bit from the Heartlight saga, The Adventures of Kate, from the Atlantis saga, and of course, from the Merlin saga. The first selection is from Heartlight, Book 1 of the Heartlight saga, The Adventures of Kate.
Yeah, when I first walked into your writing room, there was this big blue fabric butterfly with a girl and her grandpa riding this big blue butterfly. Where did that come from, and what does Heartlight mean?
What a great question. That blue butterfly that's on the ceiling of my writing room
Yeah.
was a window display in a wonderful bookstore in New York called Books of Wonder. When I did my very first reading of Heartlight, and the wonderful writer Madeleine L'Engle, who was a great friend and inspiration, offered to come and introduce me. And that's the only reason anybody came. But after the event, they gave me the window display. And ever since, I've had it tacked to the ceiling of my writing room.
Gorgeous. I'm always wondering where they're riding off to.
Well, in the book Heartlight, 12-year-old Kate loves to hang out with her grandfather. He's her best friend, and she is his. Grandfather was a highly acclaimed theoretical physicist, a great scientist, until he started reaching beyond the bounds of what many scientists could tolerate as hard science. And so now he's somewhat disgraced. But that doesn't mean anything to Kate. She still loves to hang out with him in his laboratory in the back of their house. As she brings him some fresh oatmeal cookies that she's just baked, he says, looking at a prism that is just then catching the light from the window and sending rainbow colors all across the walls and ceiling of his laboratory. You know, life should be like a prism, inhaling light, exhaling rainbows. Now, Kate doesn't have a clue what that means, but she nods and takes a bite of oatmeal cookies and hands the rest to Grandfather. Turning toward the cookies, Grandfather takes a bite himself, and then he peers into the distance as if he were looking right through the wall into a faraway world. Time for that secret, Kate, he explains. Quite by accident, today, I have discovered a way to liberate the part of us that is most similar to light. You mean our souls? Added Kate, struggling to understand. You could call it that, answered Grandfather. People have given it many names in many languages across the ages. I call it our Heartlight. But how? How does it work? Well, only God knows the answer to that one, Kate. But if you keep asking, perhaps he'll give us a hint, she finished, grinning. But what does all this have to do with traveling faster than light? That's what you were talking about. Everything, replied Grandfather, taking her hands into his own. When what I have crafted here in this laboratory is allowed to react with your inner light, your Heartlight, then you can instantly travel anywhere in the universe. Yes, faster than light. But I don't understand how you could travel into outer space without a spaceship to take you there. Grandfather's brow furrowed. How can I explain this? Think of it like your imagination. All you need to do to go someplace in your imagination is to imagine it, right? Then presto, you arrive there faster than light. That's how Heartlight works. Kate leaned against the desk in utter amazement. Even if she didn't understand how all this worked, she finally understood why Grandfather had been working so hard and why he had that triumphant gleam in his eyes this morning. So, is this why you wanted to study the wings of that morpho butterfly? She asked. Yes. His voice now was almost a whisper. It was the morpho who gave me the first clue that there is indeed a connection between the nature of light and the nature of the soul. So you're saying that our souls and the stars and the wings of a butterfly are all somehow connected? Yes, the old man agreed, nodding thoughtfully. They are all part of the great pattern. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the humming equipment, the vibrating beakers, and the continuous clattering of everything in the laboratory. At last, Kate whispered, "If you're really right about this, and how to free your Heartlight to travel anywhere in the universe, where would you like to go first?" finished Grandfather, his eyes alight. "Let me show you."
Whew. I want you to keep reading.
All right, I'll give you another little glimpse of what happens. The story does ratchet up in suspense, I will say, just a little bit. The whole universe is at risk, basically, because something terrible happens in that moment. Grandfather and Kate discover that the sun, the source of all the energy to sustain life on Earth, is on the verge of collapse. Something sinister is sapping the inner core of the sun, taking its energy elsewhere in space. And that's going to leave the sun so unstable, it will collapse and then explode and wipe out all life on Earth. Fortunately, they have a lot of time to solve the problem, because if Grandfather's equipment is right, they have a whole 4 minutes left before the sun collapses and the Earth is destroyed. Suddenly, to make things worse, Grandfather vanishes, just disappears. Kate knows, she senses he is in horrible trouble, and she grabs the key to the Heartlight just as an intruder enters the laboratory and lunges for it, hoping against hope that she could somehow help, maybe even save her beloved grandfather. So like I said, no suspense. So the instant Kate touched the key to the Heartlight, a heavy blue-green mist submerged her vision and swirled about her like a cyclone, carrying her into a state of being she had never known before. There was no sound, only motion, motion, motion. Warm electric sensations coursed through her and around her, and she felt lighter, lighter than a bubble on a breeze. Slowly, the blue-green color, the same color as the Morpho's wings in Grandfather's collection, began to deepen, to thicken, until strange shapes began to form out of the wisps of mist surrounding her. On either side, Kate could see the shimmering colors solidify into large, iridescent platforms. Could they be wings? Then she felt herself seated on the sleek black body with the round head right in front of her, and she knew where she was. Simultaneously, 2 delicate antennae began to unfurl from the top of the head, quivering with new life. "A butterfly!" she cried, nearly falling off her perch. "I'm riding a great butterfly." As if in answer, the great flashing wings began beating in a mighty rhythm. Kate suddenly felt like a jockey astride a colossal racehorse, but there was no saddle to hold her steady and no bridle to guide her course. She closed her eyes tight. Borne on brilliant blue-green wings, she rose swiftly through the clouds. Higher and higher she climbed, and when she opened her eyes at last, it was just in time to see a group of snow geese emerging from a lumbering cumulus cloud just ahead. She forced herself to glance downward at the hilly countryside fast receding in the distance. And so her quest began.
Thank you. I've been wondering.
Now you know why there is a great fabric butterfly on the ceiling of my writing room.
I can't wait to finish that one.
Now I'm going to read to you from Atlantis Lost, which is book 3 of the Atlantis saga. Now, in this tale, there is another creature of light, not a butterfly, but a creature of light and sound. which together makes magical music. Meet the chimewings. Music had always filled her thoughts, even before she was born. During all her months in her mother's womb, Omaria heard music everywhere. Songs hummed in her still-forming ears, danced to the cadence of her mother's heartbeat, and flowed through her young veins, none of which was surprising at all, since Omaria was one of the rarest creatures in the spirit realm of Atlantis, a harmonic chimewing. The youngest in her family, and the first chimewing to be born in many years. Her birth inspired great celebration. Spirit creatures came from all across the realm to sing and dance and play wondrous musical instruments in her honor, crowding around the shimmering silver cloud where her family had lived for eons. The joyful music-making lasted several days and assured Omaria that as rich with song as her time in the womb had been, her new life after birth would be even more sonorous, perhaps even more magical. In the weeks since, she'd been discovering all the ways that she herself could make light and sound and music. For even though she was just a tiny creature, resembling a small, beautiful bird, she possessed the special power of all chimewings to make music that swelled and flowed out across the spirit realm, reaching countless distant worlds like rays of light. All it took, Omaria discovered, was a single beat of her iridescent lavender wings. That simple motion produced the sweeping sounds of dozens of violins. Of course, learning how to play those violins in tune would take years of practice. And every time there was a burst of new light and new color that flowed outward from her. Each time she took a breath, in fact, the air rang with the peals of bells and more light and colors, and the merest twitch of one of her antennae made a haunting, flute-like sound that echoed eerily for days. For she combined the magic of music with the magic of light.
Lovely. I want to meet that creature.
And just this morning as the sun was rising here, I heard the growing chorus of songbirds. The robins and the blackbirds all started singing, and that swelled even as the light swelled. So as this beautiful pink and lavender color turning into golden rays filled the land and the trees, song and music was also filling the air all around us.
Begins with nature, huh? We are mimicking the birds and the sunlight coming up over the horizon as our own stage.
Right. The original stage.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, allow me to read to you a bit from The Great Tree of Avalon. I'm going to start with Book 2 of that trilogy, which is also Book 10 of the Merlin saga. First, a selection showing the widely varied qualities of light. In this section, you're going to hear about the blazing radiance of a star, as well as the mysterious gleam of a magical creature. Just by way of background, this book, like all the others in the Great Tree of Avalon trilogy, features Tamwin, a bumbling wilderness guide, terribly clumsy, but good of heart. His origins are unclear, even to himself, and his name, too, is ambiguous, for Tamwin means dark flame in the most ancient tongue of Avalon. He wonders, will he bring light into the world? or cast it into eternal darkness? Will he be dark, or will he be flame? No one knows. Even so, Tamlin takes on the greatest quest imaginable. And in this volume, he has committed to doing it, to save the world he loves, the great tree of Avalon, and just maybe to win the heart of Ellie, the banished young priestess he loves more than any other person. Tamlin vows to try even if it means his death, which it almost certainly will. For the great tree of Avalon is in dire peril, the worst ever. The most revered constellation in the night sky, 7 bright stars known as the Wizard's Staff that were originally created by the wizard Merlin himself to make a doorway between Avalon and the spirit realm. Those 7 stars have suddenly, inexplicably gone out. So the sky is now much darker, as is the future of this magical world.
Let's hear the passage.
Tamlin stepped toward his companions, his bare feet crunching on the snow. He moved slowly but deliberately, still pondering his terrible dream. Just short of the stargazing stone where Ellie sat, he stopped and drew a deep breath. "Well," he began, trying not to look at her, "I think there's just one thing to do." "Which is?" probed the crusty old sprite sitting next to Ellie, Newick, his liquid purple eyes locked on Tamlin. "Go up there, all the way to the stars." "And just what," demanded the sprite, "would you do if you ever actually reached the stars?" "Well, I would relight them, restore them somehow. That's the only way to stop the spirit Rita Gower, the only way to save our home." "But," objected Ellie, "that's crazy. No one can do that. Lighting stars is no simple matter, especially for you." Still unwilling to look directly at Ellie, Tamlin spoke instead to the sprite. "Look, long ago, when those same 7 stars went dark the first time, back at the Age of Storms, Merlin said it was essential to relight them, and he did find some way to do it, didn't he?" "Sure," replied Newick, "but he was a wizard," said Tamlin bitterly, "and I am definitely not, as all of you know. I am just a stupid fool." His throat suddenly grew hoarse. "But maybe I could still find a way." He glanced ever so briefly at Ellie. "Before it's too late." Ellie, blinking the mist from her eyes, watched him in silence. Shim ambled over, and he shook his white mop of hair. "You is full of madness, lad. Certainly, definitely, absolutely." "Maybe so, but I'm convinced it's the only way to save Avalon." "I think," declared Newick, "that you might also have another reason for going." Tamlin swallowed. "Yes, old one, you're right. I also want to try to find my father. Maybe I can find him, somewhere between here and the stars." "Humph," said Newick. "Or at least his torch. His precious torch, said to have been a gift from Merlin himself. Crystallis carried it everywhere, on all his expeditions around Avalon." Newick's black color rippled with a bit of red. "I heard him say once that the torch would never go out until the moment he died." Tamlin started to speak, and then he froze. He stood as still as the snow-frosted rocks all around, his expression one of utter surprise. For someone else was approaching the companions, someone Tamlin recognized instantly from the songs of bards. Not in all his years of trekking had Tamlin ever expected to see this creature, for the bards, with good reason, called her the most elusive beauty in all the lands. This was the sight of a lifetime, a creature more legend than reality. It was the sapphire unicorn. Through all the ages of Avalon, there had been only one of her kind. She loped up the steep slope to the summit with the ease of a gentle wind, her head held high, her hooves kicking up puffs of sparkling snow. Her horn glowed lustrous blue, as did her fetlocks, her mane, and her flowing tail. Powerful thigh muscles flexed as she bounded over the drifts. It was her eyes, though, that most arrested Tamwin. Deep as an endless slice of sky they were, and just as blue. And there was something old about them. As old, it seemed, as the great tree of Avalon itself. They seemed to shine with the sorrows and hopes and longings of all living creatures. And yet they gleamed with newness, too, as vibrant as the first rays of light from a newborn star.
Magical.
Yeah, and let's appreciate that different quality of light that's in the unicorn's horn and eyes.
Yeah.
It's subtle, right? It's mysterious. It's like, have you ever seen moonlight through mist?
Yes.
It's like that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Magical light.
Yeah. Hard to put into words, but you did well.
I gave it a try. So, would you like to find out what happens to those darkened stars of Avalon?
Yes, of course.
Well, you'll get your wish. You will find out in part 2 of this episode.
Can't wait.
And it will also include that song that you're going to share with us, Carolyn.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, it's going to be wonderful. I know. I can't wait to share it with folks out there. And it will also include that love poem that I promised. To everyone out there, let me just say thank you so much for joining us for Magic and Mountains. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, may you have magical days.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Magic and Mountains, the T.A. Barron podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information and to find all of T.A.'s books, visit tabarron.com. Have a magical week.